See, your question was well timed. That's all I wanted to say. Don't you feel embraced by the universe, Pat? No, your question was well timed, I think, right? Okay, good. Maybe I will just say one thing, which is not an interpretation, but how many people have ever been to Jerusalem? Olga, Olga's been, who else? You've been to Jerusalem. So, and Moshe's from Israel, so you can kind of relate to this anthropological tour of all the different ways of praying, because it's really quite extraordinary. If you go to the old city in Jerusalem, I finished my training in Israel, so I had a chance to go. And the old city, you're in there's 4 sections. There's 2 different kinds of Christianity, Judaism and Islamic. That's correct, isn't it? Those are the 4. So you're in, and of course there's the Wailing Wall that, Moshe saw everyone praying the Wailing Wall. But there's these 4 different religions in one walled-in city. You're with the Jews, and then you turn the corner, and you've got the Orthodox Catholics, and then you turn the corner. It's amazing, really. So I don't know how all that exists, but somehow it does. And that's where that was his life, of course, to be in the middle of all that. All right. Please lie on your back. Bend your, let's see, what should we bend? Bend both knees. And put both hands standing. And just a few times, very, very slowly, lift your right hip. Pass the pressure over to the left shoulder blade. And come back. And lift your left hip. And pass the pressure to your right shoulder blade and come back. Feel if there's any change in how you put your hands on the floor, in what you feel in your shoulders, what you feel in your shoulder girdle means the connection between your shoulder blade, your clavicle. And then stop that a moment, stay with the bridge, and press your feet into the floor, and stop, and then press your pelvis into the floor, and stop. Your lower back, press it into the floor and stop. The middle of yourself, and stop. Press your shoulder blades into the floor and stop. Press the back of your head into the floor and stop. You have to put something under the hands. It's just not. And then go back the other way from the head to the shoulders. Pass the movement downward like in a wave. From the top to the bottom, from the bottom to the top. Feel how as one part presses, some other part below or above gets a little bit light. Keep your breathing free. Now, find out if there's any place that feels a little bit more alive today, or some part of yourself moving that feels new or fresh or don't quite remember from yesterday. Maybe somewhere in the upper part of you. And put your arms and legs down a minute. Listen to the way the different parts of your spine are lying. Which parts are clearer, less clear? Now, bend your knees again and put both arms in a bridge. And this time, make that ripple or that wave-like movement from your right hand across to your left shoulder, to your left hand, and then from the left hand to the left shoulder across your chest to the right side. And as you push with one hand, feel how does your clavicle move in space relative to your sternum? Does it come forward? Could it come forward? And when I watch you, it's, for many of you, it's as if you have this image of your chest as if you have a breastplate, right? As if everything has to stay on the same level. So it's actually possible for one side of the chest to move forward and the other side to move backward. In other words, they don't need to stay on the same level. One, you lift the right shoulder blade away from the floor. As you pass the movement to the left shoulder blade presses backward. The left side of the chest presses backward, yeah. So that you feel some movement of your clavicles and your upper ribs relative to your sternum. It's not, they don't have to stay on the same level. The ribs can actually move forward on one side. Just like the clavicle can move forward, the ribs can move back on the other. Let your feet know about it. Let your hips know about it. Good. And put the arms down and rest. What's your image? What's your self-image of what's possible for ribs? It's accidental. Just happens to be like that. Listen to your breathing. Now, bend both knees and only your left hand in a bridge. And this time, pass the wave from your left hand to your right foot and back. And keep on doing that from your right foot to your left hand and back. And feel when you push with the left hand, if your left shoulder blade can lift away from the floor, your left clavicle can come forward relative to your sternum. You pass the movement to the other hip, to the other foot, and then back. And maybe you can feel today that there's a few more parts of yourself that know about the movement, that participate in the movement. So yesterday I was saying, I think it was yesterday, I was saying this idea of each time finding another differentiation of the movement of one rib relative to another, one vertebra relative to another, finding something differentiating more than just hip, shoulder. And then leave that a moment and stay with the left arm in a bridge if you can. You come in and out of it as you need to. But with the left arm in a bridge and both knees bent, could you pass the movement from your right foot to your right shoulder and back? What would that movement be like? Pass the wave-like pressure. So instead of going diagonally, you think that you press your right foot into the floor and then you press the back of your pelvis into the floor on the right, and then the lower ribs on the right, middle of yourself, right shoulder blade, and back. Pass the movement along the right side. Of course, as you do that, you feel also something happening on the left side. Does it feel like to try to pass the movement not on the diagonal, along your right side? And then alternate a few times. So once you go diagonally, and then the next time you go down, once you go right foot to left shoulder, and once you go right foot to right shoulder. Feel how much easier it is today to work with that kind of very fine movement and have your breathing be free. The breathing is much, much freer today than it was yesterday for people, for many people. It means the effort has gone down. It means the attention available to try to learn something new has increased. And rest a little, put everything down. And listen to your breathing. Now, this time, put the left arm in a bridge and bend the left leg only. And lift your left hip, push with your left hand, look to the right, and a few times allow the back of the head to go backward. Just feel how that is now. And which way of doing it? If there's basically 3 ways of doing it. Starting with the foot going upward, starting with the hand going downward, or simultaneously. Which way did you pick? And is there any change? Where do you feel maybe some help from the prayer lesson? There's more of your entire self involved, isn't it, than yesterday? That's what, there's more of the entire self. And then that means that the timing is nice and even, not skipping, not speeding up, not increasing effort when you substituting will for skill, we would say. Now, come back and just a few times lift only the left shoulder blade and put it down. Just not even the head through the gap now. Just simply lift a few times the left shoulder away from the floor and put it down. Not such an easy movement to lift the left shoulder. Feel that those ribs underneath the shoulder blade can also move. But when you lift only the left shoulder blade like that, is it a little bit clearer that the left clavicle is connected to the left shoulder? Coming forward like that. See, there's such a tendency to put too much attention to the back part in this movement, isn't it? So feel the back, the front. What happens on the right side when you lift the left shoulder? Good. And then lift just the left hip and put it down a few times. Keep the arm in a bridge if you can. Try, keep working toward having the elbows be more vertical, or otherwise maybe you have to put something under the hand because the way you lean on the wrist is not conducive to feeling of well-being. I mean, it isn't. It's very uncomfortable, actually. Then you'll take it down later, but look, then you see, then you have a possibility. Lift just the hip and back down. Is that what you feel when you do that? What other parts are affected? How clear is your hip joint in that movement? And then do a third way of doing it, which actually some people did it a bit like this yesterday. Lift everything as if the whole left side were cement and roll to the right. Completely undifferentiated, in other words. We had that example we talked about. We take the shoulder, the hip, but no relative movement of the shoulder to the hip, to the everything. And you can still breathe and do that. Well, it's when you move like cement, there's so much contraction. You do tend to halt the breath, but keep breathing. Everything like cement. Roll. But the knee still stays not too tilting. It tilts a little bit, not so much, yeah. But anyway, that's good. That was an okay interpretation of rolling like cement. A few times. Everything together. Very little differentiation. Okay. And then come back and do it any way you like a few times. And feel what did the differentiations and non-differentiations, how did they influence it? And is it any more possible today to relate to this idea that at a certain point, the head becomes lighter on the floor, and if the face is turned to the right, it can very, very easily go backward without a lot of work in the neck. It's almost carried through the gap. All right, good, rest. And again, listen to your breathing. Now, come back into the same position. So you bend the left knee, you put your left hand on the floor. And this time, take your right hand and put it on top of your right elbow. And on top of your left elbow. Actually, before we do that, let's do something else. Slide a little bit your left hand closer to your neck and away. Some people have the hand maybe too close to the head, some have too far away, but slide the hand, in other words, right and left on the floor. The fingers are pointing 45 degrees downward, which means, do you understand this idea of the 45 degrees? If they were straight, if they were straight out to the side, we would call that 90. If they were straight headward, we'd call that 0. So straight, what am I saying that right? 45 degrees is downward, but halfway between a right angle and completely down. So that's a right angle. Completely down would be where, if the fingers were pointing completely toward the feet, would be where? Yeah, you can't do it yet. Okay, and somewhere in between that. Isn't it interesting you don't have the faintest idea where your hand is in space? Do you? I mean, not that it's a terribly familiar movement, but That's okay. That's starting to look like 45 degrees. Now, okay, so then from there, slide the hand closer to your left ear and further away. Say it like that too. And then feel as you come closer what happens in your shoulder blade, in your clavicle, in your chest, in your elbow, in the way the arm sits in the joint. As you go further, what happens? That's a right angle. That's not 45 degrees. I don't really want to be like a angle policeman here. No, that's 45 degrees upward, downward. Yes. Your fingers are facing toward your feet. Oh, they can do it all sorts of ways, Mark. You'd be amazed what they can do. But your fingers are, okay, put your fingers all the way facing your heel, all the way downward. As straight down as you can. And now turn your hand so that your fingers are facing the left wall. So the hand will be at a right angle to your forearm, yes? And then in between those 2 points, go halfway between those 2 points, and you'll have 45 degrees downward. Halfway between facing completely downward and facing at a right angle. So you're at a right angle. Downward. That's upward with the fingers. My accent, that's downward. I don't know what you're thinking. I'm not inside your brain, but whatever it is, it's not what that's upward with the fingers. That's upward with your fingers. Okay. It's probably some way of using yourself that's downward with the fingers, 45-degree angle. Okay? Oh, that's what it's supposed to be. That's what those words translate into, yeah. All right, good. You better rest now that you've got that, everyone. Okay. You have to stay after class and pray for a longer time, I think. All right, now come back into that position. Left hand in a bridge, fingers you know where. And take a hold of your left elbow with your right hand. Now, presumably right before we got off onto that last discourse, you were sliding your hand a little out, a little in, and maybe you found a better distance from how far from your side of your face should the lower arm be. What we're looking for in the lower leg and in the lower arm is this verticality. And for those of you that find the movement difficult, in most cases your elbows are way, way, way out to the side of where the wrist is. So that means there's something in the relationship between your arm, your shoulder, and your chest that doesn't allow you to do it. But it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you haven't found out what it is yet. It's not a real limit. It's just a imaginary limit, because of habitual ways of using yourself. Now take the elbow with your left hand, and as you lift the hip, press with the left foot, the left hand, lift the hip, lift the shoulder, take the elbow away from the knee, turn your face to the right, and allow the back of the head to go backward. Your right leg is long now. Well, yeah, that's good. There's only the left. And feel, with the help of your elbow going away from your knee, how much easier it is to do something with your shoulder blade, clavicle, chest, on the left, on the right. And then how about even as you do that, opening the mouth and letting the tongue come out, like we talked about with Moshe today. Open the mouth and let the tongue come out as you do that, and feel, remember that part in the back, the base of your skull. Some little way in which that influences the lightness of the movement of the head. And if the movement of the head becomes lighter, where do you feel it in your spine, in your sternum? Make it as big or as small as suits your learning at the moment. If it's fatiguing for the wrist, you can make it smaller, but whatever it is, feel the relationship between the knee and the elbow going away, the opening of your jaw. What happens when you stick the tongue out? Something, Moshe referred to this as what you call, you rest whenever you need to. I'm going to keep talking, but it's that atavistic means primitive movement, means some movement that we inherited from evolution. Should we just call it evolution? He mixed God and evolution up in the same ATM. I didn't think of that till just now. But there you have it. That's Moshe. So atavistic primitive means these patterns are somewhere dormant in ourselves. This is almost like a lizard, really, this one. But feel what, if you feel some very subtle kind of thing along your spine when you open the jaw and stick the tongue out like that, or your tail, your sacrum, your tailbone, or your chest. Where do you feel the influence of, and have the tongue be wide? All right, good, very good. Put everything down. Rest a little. Listen to your breathing, the different places in your spine, how they touch the floor. Is there any place in your bones that are more clear now? And feel your face and feel the space inside your mouth. And then come stand on your hands and knees. Sorry, your knees. Facing the front of the room. Your knees, not your hands and knees. And join your hands together. And just a few times, take very, very lightly, take the arms, the hands upward, go upward as far as you like, and then back, just back to the middle, not downward for the moment, just upward and back to the starting point. Feel if you feel any difference in the left side and the right. If you can connect through your sensory world, the relationship between these two things this morning, between the prayer and the gap, the head through the gap. It's a different plane of movement in some ways, but feel if the left shoulder blade, the left collarbone, the left hip joint is clearer than the right. And then you can start going down toward the floor. The biggest thing, maybe, you didn't actually, people were a bit timid with the sounds today. So maybe you do the mumbling now. Yeah, don't be shy. It doesn't matter what you say. I mean, you can say ominous, dominus, mominous. It doesn't, but make some kind of, allow some kind of vibration, or the mantra om, 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 some vibration, so that the mouth opens and the tongue does something and the sound comes out. And the other, you can go down as far as you like, and keep on feeling the difference between the two sides. Maybe carrying over to the right side what you feel in the left. And then the other thing watching you is that, okay, it's actually better now from what we did, but that there's a point in terms of this idea, like the Muslims, we say supplicate. Supplicate is an interesting word. Of course, the word supple is in there, but so when you supplicate, you give over, you obey, you bow down, you let go of the head. And many of you were bowing down, but you were holding on to the head for dear life. So at what point do you let everything go so that the hands can come naturally to the floor? It means the skull at the junction of the top of the atlas axis that he spoke about. You let go of the skull completely toward the floor. Not holding on to the head. Then, if you manage to let go of the head completely, you'll feel some chance to feel really your entire spine. From the tail to the top of the head. All right, lie on your back and rest. Now just take a few minutes for yourself to think through the variations of head through the gap this morning on the left side that we did. And make a few on the right side in your imagination, in your thinking, you can think it through, you can do a few variations. However, whatever your process is for carrying it over, for remembering, for reviewing. Was there anything new we did with the head through the gap that we didn't do yesterday or the day before? Or can you remember the order? And at some point when you're visualizing or imagining the movement, it helps sometimes to actually be in that position, which would mean that the right knee would be bent and the right arm would be bent. Maybe not for the whole time, but Moshe said it's easier to think the movement through if you take the position. If your wrist doesn't go down, put something under it. The rest of us are working on the right side. What you do with your jaw when you think it through, what you do with your mouth. How is your tongue inside your mouth? And then go ahead and do the movement a few times on the, turn your face to the left, allow your head to slide backward. You can open your mouth, stick the tongue out if you like. Keep the knee vertical though. You're leading with your head. Don't lead with your head. Let the head be light. That's better. That's the movement. That's not leading with the head. Is it becoming possible to feel that the head starts to be carried through the gap? Good. And rest. Put everything down and rest, yeah. Now you're interested in it, huh? It's getting interesting more, the more you feel more options. Okay. Now, come up to sitting. Maybe we, I don't know that I want to look at all 4 people from yesterday, but we're going to do a little bit more, just sit for a second, we're going to do a little bit more movement observation. But would you be willing to do it, Shauna? Okay. So do you remember anything about her movement from, well, actually let them get up, walk around, feel yourself, and then we'll all come stand around Shauna because